Hello programmers and welcome back to yet another Kotlin for Noobs lecture. I am your host, codingPotato. Before we start this lecture, I would like to point out that, starting with this lecture, our lectures will be split into two parts, where each lecture will cover about half a chapter, even if it means that we will have more videos in this series. This is to make room for the practice exercises that we will be doing in IntelliJ at the end of each lecture. We will still have standalone programming lectures, but those will cover the mini projects only. Originally, my plan was to have lectures that are around an hour and a half long at most, which is typically the duration of a regular college or university class. However, as we progress through the new and more complex topics, the lectures may exceed this limit. Splitting the lectures into two parts will help us keep the lectures more manageable and easy to follow. I will try to make the new videos around 45 minutes long with this new plan. So thank you for your attention and let us get started with today's lecture. So our topic today is functions in Kotlin. So this right here is saying that functions are essentially groups of statements that can perform specific tasks. And we saw during our last lecture, where we did our exercises, that a function, for example our main function, does indeed carry a group of statements that execute, and that any function, including the main function, can be called from different parts of the program. So we can see right here, this is showing us how to define a function, where we have our fun keyword, the function name, as we always do, and I did show you with the main function the parameters that we receive in the function, but we did not actually use them. And I showed you in the terminal what arguments are and how they are passed. And I told you that these are received into the function and can be used here in the statements. So those are the parameters. And here it's showing you the return type, which we will be having a look at the end of this lecture, if God wills. And you can read this by yourself, so it's pretty much what I just explained. So we have our statements here, and this is our return value, which I will explain at the end. Let me just look this, okay. So we will start by using parameters. So right here, let's look here at our print message function. This function will print a message to the console, but except this is not a string. This right here is a parameter. The parameter is coming from here. The parameter is received as an argument for the function, which means that this value stored in this variable will be sent here or used here. And how you define the type is as follows. So this right here is a string type, and you have to specify the type that is being received for the value. What I would like to explain is the difference between, because you will see these a lot, these terms, the difference between an argument and a parameter. Now I will give you a simple example. I can't spell parameter. Now I will give you a simple example. So let's say that you are talking to your friend. This is you and this is your friend. In plain English, what we call the speech or the statements that you are telling to your friend, the argument. When this argument is received by your friend, then it is called a parameter. So, which means that this right here, what I'm passing, so this is what I'm passing, I'm calling the function print message, and I'm passing it a string, and we can tell that it's a string because of the quotes, double quotes. And as I said, a string is just a group of characters between double quotes before. So this is a string. I'm passing it, so this is an argument here. This is the argument, arg for short. And when it is received here, it's called a parameter, par for short. So that is just the difference between arguments and parameters. So now that we know how to pass an argument, so this is the argument, my parameters are received here, and I can use them in the function. Okay, so this here is telling us that we can pass multiple parameters. So here we have the first parameter, which is called header, and this is the name. This is the name that I use here, see? And we have the message parameter. This is the name of it, and I'm using it here. They are both of type string. This is the type, followed by the colon character, and you can just use them in your statements. So right here we have a println statement that will print out to the console whatever the value is received here, and then it will add whatever the value is received here. So this is a string concatenation, as we saw before. You can also use string literals. So if you have a string literal, so it would be the $sign header, which is the same thing, and then space, leave a space, and then a $sign your message, just like that, and close your string. This will yield the same result as the string concatenation, and I hope that this has been clear since last time. And here I'm just passing two strings, welcome to, and you can see I'm leaving a space, so string literals would be easier to use. You don't have to think about the space here, the space and then Kotlin for Noobs. So this is received here in order, followed by this received right here. So this will be welcome to space Kotlin for Noobs, and it will be properly formatted because we have the space here. If you don't want to add spaces here or worry about it, just remove the space and use string literals just like I did. Put a space as a string and then your second variable. Okay, moving on. This is talking about default parameters. So let's say that you have a greeter function which prints out a greeting to the user. The function says hello, comma, followed by the name. So as you can see here, we are using string literals, followed by the name and then the message. They are all received right here. So the name, the message, and that is pretty much it. The hello is just a string. So if you look here, you would see that starting from here, this is a little different. So we gave it the name, the variable, and we assigned it a type of string, which is the data type. And then we said it's equal to how are you doing. Now what this does, for example, here I'm calling the function twice. The first time I'm giving it only one argument, but the second time I'm giving it two arguments, both of the same type, which is a string. Now these both will work, even though we have two parameters here that need to be received. The reason is that the second parameter has a default value. This default value will allow the function to work and insert this value into the variable if there is no argument passed from the main function. So with here, when we come to our first example, I'm just passing it codingPotato. So this will be received here as the name. However, the message has no argument, therefore this parameter is empty. So this will assign here, this value will be assigned into the message variable, and this will print out hello codingPotato, the name that I passed, and then it will insert the default value into the message variable. So it will say how are you doing, etc. Alright, so for the second statement we have two arguments, which is the name, it's the same name, codingPotato. So this will be received just like the first time. So it will say hello codingPotato. However, here we are passing the second argument, which means that this assignment will not happen. Therefore, the value stored in message will be whatever I pass it. So it will say, did you finish whatever I sent the next video yet? Okay. So, and it says at the bottom right here, it says that name, the name variable, is a mandatory field or parameter, and the message variable, or let's say parameter, is an optional field or parameter as it has a default value. And as you can see, this can become handy in many situations. So that is for default parameters. And now we would like to talk about something known as named arguments. So this right here is explaining the issue that may arise when using the default parameters. So let's say that you have the greeter function, but this time you have three parameters: the name, the title, and the message. So let's say that I have to pass this. This is a mandatory parameter. Okay, so let's say I pass this one. I did pass this one. And this has a default value, which is doctor. And the message also has a default value, which is how are you. Let's say that I would like to keep this one. I would like to keep this one, and I would like to change this one. These both are optional. But in my main function, if I say greeter and I pass it my name, coding for short, without potato, comma, the second parameter. I said I want to keep this one, but now if I type the second parameter and I want to change this one, and I just type, instead of how are you, I would like to send hi, just hi. This will not work because this is the second parameter or argument, which will be received as the second parameter here. So this will be broken. It will say coding welcome. It will say welcome coding, or the title, sorry. It will say welcome hi. It will say welcome hi because this is the second thing I passed. And then the message will be whatever the default value is. The name, sorry, here, coding hi. So it's messed up. It says welcome hi coding, how are you. It kind of works, welcome hi, if your English is not that good, but as you can see, I cannot change the order of the parameters or the arguments that I pass. So if I pass the argument 1 followed by 2, it will be received as 1 followed by 2. If this has 3, this will be the default. And I want to change the third one, not the second one, which will not work. So to fix this, we have something called as named arguments. Now a named argument looks just like this. We have the same thing, the same function, name, title, and message. These two have a default value, while the name is mandatory and does not have a main value. So I have to pass it. Now, if I want to specify, when I pass the arguments, if I want to specify which arguments go where, I can use names, which is what this is. As you can see here, I have name is equal to codingPotato instead of just writing codingPotato. Now this identifies the name of the parameter. So this argument will come here and it will look for the name parameter, which means that I need to know the names of the variables here. And then for the second one, I have message. So it's right here. See, I'm passing it as the second argument, but I'm specifying that this needs to go into the message variable, which will come here, which is this third parameter, not the second one. So it's here the second argument, but here it's landing in the third parameter. And it will land here. It will replace this with have a nice day, etc. So it's very clear. It's just maybe a little confusing at first. If you use languages like Python, I think this will be easy for you to understand. If not, I hope that it is pretty straightforward. So here it's saying that we can mix all of what we learned together. So here I am sending the message first as a named argument. I'm giving it the name, and then here I am. It's not saying we are mixing. Sorry, I did not read this, but it's just saying that you can change the order. So I'm passing the message first, which is the third, and then I'm passing the name, which is the first parameter here. And since I have the names, it's fine to have it like that. If not, then the first one will be received in the first parameter, the second one will be received in the second parameter, and so on. I think here it's saying that we can mix. Yep. Here it's saying positional and named arguments. So this here is a positional argument which will land. It doesn't have the equal or the name specified. So it will land in the first, explicitly it will land in the first parameter. But this solves our first issue exactly. And this has the message. So the message will land here. And then we have this is not being passed neither by positional nor by named arguments. So this will default to the default value, which is doctor. So what we learned actually solved our first problem. And of course you have to go over all of this and read it by yourself. But I hope that I am delivering the idea just fine. Okay, so now we have something known as arbitrary number of arguments. So let's say in some cases, it doesn't happen much, as I can say, but in some cases you would want to make a function that will accept any number of arguments. So I can pass it 1, I can pass it 2, I can pass it 10, I can pass it 20 arguments. So how would that work? For that we use something that is a little like loops. So here in our first one we are passing only one arg. In the second one we are passing 2 args of type string. So here Kotlin has a new keyword that is var arg. Var arg I think stands for variable number of arguments. So var arg, and the name, this is the name of the variable, and here is the type. As usual, you need to specify the type. So this is a new keyword, this right here. It's not a name, it's not anything else, it's a keyword from Kotlin. So, and I just dropped my pen. And here, in the first statement, we are using this variable argument thing. So we use the name dot for each. For each is a loop. It loops through the values stored in this variable. So this variable will carry all what I pass. And I can loop through each of these variables using the for each keyword. And then you have your scope right here. You can have it on multiple lines or just a single line. And here we have the statement, which is print, and we are using string literal. So $it. It is the variable that for each gives you it. So let's say this is params. I know it's maybe a little complicated for some of you at first, but take things step by step. So this is my params variable, okay? It contains more variables like this, okay? So these variables, for example, let's say we are using number 2, John and Denise. So val of type string equals John, and val of type string as well equals Denise. So for each will allow me to access each one of these one by one. So the first time I will get John. It is a variable that for each gives you that will change at each iteration. So the first time I'm getting John using it, and the second time I'm getting Denise. So I print it out to the console, and this will run a couple of times. So the first time it will print John, and then followed by comma, and a space, and then Denise. If I have more, it will do the same thing. So it's a loop, as we saw before with while loops, and the other types of loops. It's a loop that has whatever amount of arguments I'm passing as variables. And we have an exercise at the end. I hope that it will make things a little more clear. So that is for arbitrary number of arguments. And here it's saying that parameters are actually vals. Now we know the difference between a val and a var. The var can have the value inside of it can change. This cannot change, as we said before and as we saw before. The parameters that are received in a function are vals actually. So I, in this case, which is the name of this variable, is a val. So this won't work. If I do I equals I plus 1, so I'm trying to change the value that's inside I, or as a short I can do I plus plus, or I equals plus equal 1, all of what we've learned before. These all won't work because they are trying to change the value that is stored in I. It's not possible because parameters in Kotlin are vals. So finally, we have returning values from functions. I did mention this briefly before, that functions can return values. For example, I call a function which does some calculation, and then it gives me back the value. I receive this value and I store it in a variable. So let's say this function square, which squares a number and returns the result to me. So it's in math, 2 squared, for example, or 3 squared. So this is what this function does. So for example, if I have in my main function, I call this function, I have to save the result into a variable. So I will say val result equals, I will now call the function equals square, and I will pass it a number. As you can see, here it receives one variable called num with the type integer, but I don't care about the name, so I will just say squared 2. This is my argument received here as a parameter saved in this variable. So square 2 will do its thing, will do its statement, will do its calculations, and returns a value that I save in this variable. Okay, so here as we can see, using the return keyword, this is another new keyword that you have to memorize. The return keyword will return whatever expression happens after it. So here we have an expression. The result of this expression, it will return it, which is num multiplied by num. So 2 squared is actually 2 multiplied by 2. So this will return this value. So if it receives 2, it will return 2 multiplied by 2. It will return 4, and I will receive it and save it in whatever variable I am using. So I hope this is clear. And now we can start with our exercise. Our exercise is very nice. It's saying make a simple hospital demo program that collects a patient's information from the console and prints them back. So we do this while paying attention to the following guidelines. The application must use functions, and the application should collect information including the patient's name, the patient's age, and the patient's date of birth. And it's saying make a function, another function, that calculates the person's age in days and returns the value. So this is just to use the return thing right here that we talked about. Then display the result with the previously collected information. So right now, and as I said at the beginning, we will do this exercise, and in IntelliJ of course. And so yeah, let's just do that. So I will move to my computer. This is where we ended up last time, and of course this has been uploaded to GitHub. If you haven't had a look at that, please find the link in the description. and we can start with our exercise now. We can start by creating our exercise class file as we have done before, and using the same naming convention. This is lecture 4 P1 to indicate that this is part 1. Lecture 4 P1 exercise. This is exercise 1 and it's the only exercise we have. So class, alright, so this is our class, and we define our init function as usual, which will be the starting point of this exercise. We can start by printing out a welcoming message. So println welcome to the hospital demo program, or let's say exercise. And then we will start by collecting the information. So we need the patient's name. So previously what we did, we used the read line function immediately, but for now we will start using functions. So we will create a function called getName, and we will define this function down here. So fun getName. This function will return a string, so we must define the return type using the colon here, and then we type string. So this function returns a string. The string will be saved in this variable, as I explained in the slides. So the first thing we need to do is print a message that says, so print without ln, so because we want the input to be on the same line here. So print, please enter the patient's name, just like that, and then we read the input. So we can actually return directly, so the input will be read line. And let's see if we can do this. So it's explicitly, this is the non-null operator, so this tells the compiler that this won't be null. At the very least it will be an empty string, and we are just casting it explicitly to a string and returning it. The type is here. So when this runs, when the program reaches here, this gets called, this function getName, and it will run whatever statements I have here or expressions and return the value, which is the value of the string that we are reading from the keyboard. So this is done for the name, and we can also do the DOB, which is the date of birth, and we will create a function called getDOB, just like that. The naming conventions are what we agreed on before. Functions start with a lowercase. So let's make this function as well, fun getDOB, and the return type for this one, what I would like to show you guys is how to use the date class. So the local date is a class that represents a date. So if we hover over it, we have to import it, of course. So just click here and it will import java.time.localDate. So now we can use it, and we will print a message. Print, please enter the patient's date of birth in, we have to specify the format. So YYYY is the year, and month, then day, separated by dashes. Format, and I forgot to put the colon here, followed by a space, so that the input will be properly formatted when you type in. So, but what we will do here is that we will save the input in a variable, and that you will see why in a second. So we will call it val dob string, and this will be the string coming from the read line, just like that. And now what we will return, so we will return the local date parsed. Parse this the value in this variable. So local date is a class. Parse, as we know a little bit about objects now. We know that we use the dot operator to access functions or variables in a class. So when we do this directly, this means that parse is a static method or function inside the local date class. What the parse method or function does is that it takes a string. So this is a string, and what we are returning is a object of a local date, or a representation of a local date object. What parse does is that it takes the string in characters in plain English, and it converts it to an object of the local date type. This is what the parse function does. Parsing, you can think about it as, for example, when you do casting. So when you do dot to string, it casts it to a string. So it's a string of the string object type. Parsing is something or similar, or it's a similar idea. So now, and it's better to do it like this for a reason that I will show you in a bit. And we have the requirement, which is the age in days. So we can do this, and we will do a function called calculate age in days. And let's make this function down here. So fun calculate age in days will return a type of integer. I think, just check. It will return, let's do long, because it may be a big value. So let's do long instead of integer. And what we will do is get today's date and then subtract today from the date of birth of this patient. So it will be something like this. So we will create a variable called today. So this will hold today's date. And how do we get today's date? It has to be an object. So we can use the local date class, and it has another static method called now. So this method or function will return to me today's date object, and it will be saved in the today variable. And then I can return today dot to epoch. Epoch is just a format of a date, so we have to properly format it. And then we have to subtract it from dob dot. I forgot to pass the. Here we have to pass the date of birth that we got previously, right here. So we pass the function the patient's dob, which we got using the get dob function, and it's giving us an error because there is no parameter here. So we have to add this parameter. So this is a dob of type local date. So we do dob dot. It should be to epoch as well, to epoch day. So what this does is that we subtract, as I said, today from the patient's date of birth, and then we will get the age in days. I hope it's clear. And now that we have our name, the date of birth, and the age in days, we can print out to the console the information that we acquired. So first one, println. We can print the patient's name, and we can use a string literal to just insert the value in name. And then also we will print line the age of the patient. And for here we need to run some code or a statement. So we can use string literals with the scope, the curly brackets, and as we said before, everything in here is just code, and the value, returned value from this code, will be printed out to the console on this line. So what we do is we used a function which we will do, which is get age, and we pass it the date of birth. We have to create get age as well. So function get age, and what we will pass it is the dob, which we already did. It's of a type local date, and it returns, the return type is an integer. So what this does, it gets today's date, so val today equals local date, the local, why is it not? Local date dot now, so this is today's date. We don't need the, it's optional, like I said before, the semicolons in Kotlin. And we will return the period, which is another class from java.time, dot between date of birth and today in years. So I think this is pretty straightforward. Now you know that we have classes that do different things. So period is a class from Java, as you can see here. It's from java.time.period. And it has a function called between. So this will calculate the period between the date of birth and today, and it can convert it to years using the dot years. This is a, I think it will show us here. It's an integer. Okay. So now that we get the age using this function, we can now do what else? Println. We can show the date of birth, or we should have done it before the age. So let's take this. So we showed the date of birth, and we just showed whatever we got, which is DOB. Yep, this will work. And then we show the age in years, and then we show, just, I would like to put patients before each one of them. So patient's date of birth, this is 2 spaces, and patient's age. And finally, we can do the age in days. Println patients, or I have it already copied, age in days. And this is whatever value we have stored here. So string literal and followed by the variable name, which will work. I will save, Control S. So I think this is done, and I think it will work, hopefully. I know that I am picking up the pace, but like I said, we don't have much time. So if you are wondering about any, for example, any of the things that I showed that are new, for example, the local date and the period, you can read the documentation online from the Java website, or just Google it. It will show you whatever you need, or I think you can find whatever you're looking for. So we have to add this to our examples menu. So we have, this is 6. So, and we have to do the plus here. So string concatenation works. So this is the hospital demo example. I would like to change this number guessing game, and I would like to mention that this is the mini project that we did last time. Mini project. Like I said, the programming lectures, the dedicated programming lectures, in those we will do our mini projects, which should be a little more complicated than the normal examples that we do during the lectures or at the end of each lecture. So hospital demo example, and number 6 right here in our when statement. So we do lecture 4, lecture, do I have a typo, or is it just being annoying? Let's check this out. Class lecture 4, let me just copy it. Yeah, it works. It's just the IntelliSense or something like that. Okay, so we can run this and give it a try. So I'll hit run and let it compile. Okay, so okay, and there is an issue. We forgot to put a new line here. So \n, run it again. Shouldn't take that much time this time to compile. Okay, so 6 hospital demo example. So I'll type in 6 and we have our example running. Welcome to hospital demo exercise. So the patient's name is coding. Enter. Please enter the patient's date of birth in year, month, day. So I was born last year. I was born in 2022, January 01, and the day, yeah, I was born on the 1st. Yep, I'm just 1 year old. So it gave us the information. Patient's name is coding, patient's date of birth, patient's age is 1 year, and patient's age in days 471. Alright guys, so I will upload this to GitHub, of course, and the link for that is in the description. The slides are also uploaded, and the link for that is also in the description. So that is all for this time. Until next time, and remember, on the internet, nobody knows that you are a potato, especially not a coding potato. And I would like to conclude with سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.